Hi, today we are going to do a lesson over ratios. So the goals of this video are to describe a ratio relationship between two quantities, be able to write a ratio when given the same units, and be able to write a ratio when given different units. So before we begin, let's review how to find equivalent fractions. So when we are looking for equivalent fractions, we need to take 8/12 and either multiply by the same factor or divide by the same factor, and that will give us what's called an equivalent ratio. So let's think about if I were to divide both of these by a 2 because they are both even, I would have a 4 on top, 8 divided by 2, and a 6 on the bottom. So 4/6 and 8/12 are an equivalent ratio. I could also divide by 2 again, and that would give me 2 on the top and 3 on the bottom. So all of these fractions are equivalent to each other. If I were to make my fraction have larger numbers on top and bottom, I could double them or triple them. Really, the equivalent equivalent fractions are endless. So 16/24 is also equivalent, and we could just keep going and going. So hopefully you now remember what it means to be an equivalent fraction. So ratios are very similar. You are comparing two different things when it comes to ratios. For example, if you had a fruit bowl and in it you had 5 apples and 10 oranges, that is called a ratio. And a ratio can be written with words as you see here. It can be written like a fraction, so 5/10, and it can be also written as with a colon, just like this. So those are the 3 ways: words, as a fraction, or with a colon. Okay? So that is a ratio. Also, when you simplify ratios, they still have the same value. So I can simplify 5/10 to 1/2 because I can divide both of these by the same factor of 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. Let me show you what I mean. If I were to have 5 apples in my bowl, okay, and then if I were to have 10 oranges, okay, I can see that my ratio is 5/10. I can also see that I'm able to make groups like this, and for every group that I make, I have 1 apple and 2 oranges. Okay, so that's a picture of simplifying ratios. If we want to determine, here's that word again from our review, equivalent ratios, okay, what you're going to do is, so what we're going to decide is, are these two ratios equivalent? 18/63 and 14/49. Okay, so step 1, write each ratio as a fraction. That's done for us. Step 2 is to simplify. So I have to decide with 18 and 63, what could I divide both of these numbers by? And 9 comes to mind, so I'm going to start there. 18 divided by 9 is 2. 63 divided by 9 is 7. So my simplified ratio is 2/7, or 2/7. If I come over here to my other side, my other ratio, 14/49, I know that both of these numbers are multiples of 7. 14 divided by 7 is 2, and 49 divided by 7 is 7. Both of these fractions, which are also ratios, simplified to the same simplified ratio. So yes, these are equivalent ratios because they both simplified to 2/7. I would challenge you to pause this and try this practice problem and see how you do. So this says there are 10 people in a room. 6 are boys, 4 are girls. Simplify the ratios. Okay. What is the ratio of boys to girls? Boys to girls. And this is something that you need to make sure you know. Whatever comes first in the sentence is what goes in the top position in the ratio. Okay. Let's see. 6 are boys and 4 are girls. So my ratio is 6 to 4. And then it does say to simplify, so I know I can divide both of these by 2. And my simplified ratio is for every 3 boys, there are 2 girls. And I'm just putting my letters there to remind me what those stand for. But you could just say 3 to 2. You could also write it with a colon, and you could also write it with words. But that would be a great answer right there. And you don't change that in any way. A ratio has to have just one number on top and one number on bottom. You would not want to make this any different because remember, we're always just comparing two quantities. And then for the next one, what's the ratio of girls to boys? So the only thing that's different is my girl number is going to go in the top position and the boy number is going to go on the bottom. So 4 on top, 6 on bottom. That still simplifies by dividing by 2. And so my answer for this one is 2 to 3, like that. And then the last thing is what is the ratio of boys to total? Boys to total. And I know that there's 6 boys and it says there's 10 people in the room. That would simplify if you divide both by 2, 3 to 5. Okay, and then our last problem is there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. How many minutes are in 3 hours? So we can write a ratio, okay, and then we can find out what the equivalent ratio is for this. So I would again challenge you to pause and try it. So for this one, we're comparing minutes to hours. And they're telling us that for every 60 minutes, it's 1 hour. And we want to find the equivalent ratio for 3 hours. And this, you may see this someone call this scaling. So I know that I'm kind of scaling up because I'm multiplying by 3 to go from 1 hour to 3 hours. So we have to do the same thing to the minutes. And I know 6 times 3 is 18, add a 0. So my answer would be 180 minutes in 3 hours. Okay, so here's a little check for you. Do you now know how to describe a ratio relationship between two quantities? Do you know how to write a ratio given the same units, like people when we did the boys to girls? And then can you write a ratio with different units, similar to practice problem 2, where we went from hours and minutes and hours? If you can, then you should be good to continue your practice and move on.